Обвинета дека не е повеќе демократија со сериозни критики за владењето на правото, состојбата со медиумските слободи и човековите права. Унгарија денес е доказ дека токму во срцето на Европа се кршат европските вредности. За други пак, таа е само лошото момче на ЕУ кое што отворено го кажува она што и некои други земји членки го мислат, но не смеат да го кажат. Од тука, од Будимпешта, од земјата која што ќе биде следен претседавач со ЕУ, ви носиме ексклузивна анализа за тоа што тоа ќе значи за процесот на проширување, но и за внатрешните состојби во Унгарија, особено низ призмата на владењето на правото. Имаме интересни, релевантни соговорници, а гостин ни е министерот за надворешни работи, Петар Сјарто. Со него ви ветуваме на вистина интересен разговор. Останете со нас.
Унгарија е членка на Европската Унија веќе 20 години. Ова е една од оние земји кои што важат за најголеми поддржувачи на идејата за проширување на европското семејство, но и членка каде што најмногу се доведуваат во прашање европските вредности и заедничките политики.
Дебатата за Унгарија оди и многу подалеку, така што во европските институции се полемизира дали и воопшто станува збор за демократија, односно се опишува како хибриден режим на изборна автократија, уставен систем во кој што има избори, но почитувањето на демократските норми и стандарди отсуствува. Во западниот јавен дискурс се изразува огромна загриженост за владењето на правото и основните човекови права во Унгарија, нивото на корупција и слободата на изразување, а ситуацијата во земјата е далеку од европските стандарди што се бараат од земите кандидати за членство. Иштван Сент Ивани е познат либерал, дел од политичката сцена во Унгарија веќе 35 години и важи за сериозен критичар на така наречените и либерални политики на Виктор Орбан. Според него, државата ги држи зграпчени в раце сите институции и медиумите. Го прашавме кои се најголемите проблеми со кои се соочува Унгарија денес.
The main problem is the rule of law. The rule of law curtailed very much in the last 10 years or 14 years. It was a successive process. It's from step by step. It has been built down, the whole situation, and there is a sliding back in Hungary, obviously. That means that the state has captured all institutions, constitutional court, the court of audits, and many other so-called independent institutions are captured by the state, and therefore they can rule completely. Even the election process can be judged as unfair. It has been so categorized that it is free but not fair, because there is not an uneven field for the candidates. As you know, the government and the ruling party has so many advantages financially and also in media front and all other aspects they are supported. Therefore, there is not a real equal footing in the election, and therefore, of course, the opposition has always less chance.
Меѓутоа, токму во Будимпешта на локалните избори победи опозицијата. Ивани има логично објаснување како.
There is a obvious reason for that, because in the Budapest people have access to the independent media. In Budapest there are many independent media outlets, and Budapest is an urban area, and there is also a divide as the urban and big cities and mostly Budapest are much more oppositional voters, and in the rural area, in the small cities, the ruling party is dominant.
Огромната доминација на владеачката партија Фидес во Унгарија во голема мера им се припишува на медиумите. Над 80% од унгарските медиуми се контролирани од власта, а отсуствува објективно информирање на граѓаните наместо пропаганда. За медиумската состојба во земјата разговаравме со Беа Бодроги.
When we talk about the media situation in Hungary, I would say that one of the main issues and the problems is the media capture. The capture by the state, which means that the government and government-affiliated companies control most of the media outlets in Hungary. And as a result, most Hungarian citizens receive information from the government media. So this is the short version, and the longer version is that the media capture has the way it has built up by the government is a long process. It started 2010, and I would name 5 main elements of the media capture. which one is the media law and the media authorities that was enacted. The media law was enacted in 2010 and received lots of criticism because the media authority is fully government controlled and not independent. The members of the media council are nominated by the government, and it's been an ongoing criticism that the media authority who controls the media system here in Hungary is not independent from the government. The second point and the second main issue is that the government took over the media outlets, the private media outlets, in the last decade. But I would say one big step in 2018, then almost 500 private media outlets offered their ownership to a foundation, which is hard to explain, for outsiders, how can it happen that media owners offered freely their ownership rights to a foundation. But it's simple. This foundation is controlled by the government and it's not scrutinized.
Меѓутоа, Бодроги вели дека како позитивна нуспојава на целиот процес на државно преземање на телевизиите и весниците, повеќе професионални новинари почнале да излегуваат и да основаат независни медиуми, главно на интернет.
I think that's a good sign, and this is when the process started, that the government started to take over the independent media outlets, the same process started, that the independent journalists started to create their own media outlets, and it's a long process. But on the other hand, we can see that citizens really value quality journalism and they are ready to pay for that. But it hasn't been the case. It wasn't the case before. So we need to learn that we need to donate, we need to pay for quality content, and it takes time. Still, they represent a very small percentage of the media landscape, but I can say that there is a growing trend that people donate and give money to journalists and media outlets.
Ако ги прашате властите за слободата на изразување во Унгарија, ќе ви речат дека тоа е злонамерно преувеличување, па како контрааргумент ќе кажат дека, на пример, ниту еден новинар во оваа земја нема во затвор. И навистина е така, но Бодроги објаснува дека денес методите се пософистицирани.
Just because, when we talk about how bad the media situation in Hungary is, people think that, journalists might be killed, they might be threatened, physically threatened, but this is not the case. This is not the case in Hungary. So this is why it is not that easy to explain this media capture in Hungary. But let me just say a few examples what the independent journalists facing here. They just don't have, when they request information from government, they are denied. That's one thing. The other thing is that they are threatened by smear campaigns. This going on for a long time now. Whenever they come out with a story, mostly the independent journalists centers those investigative journalists who reveal big stories like Pegasus. Then smear campaigns start by the government and through the propaganda media. That's how they work. And recently, 2 years ago, it came out that the Hungarian government bought the Pegasus spyware, which means that not only journalists but politicians and NGOs and activists were surveyed by this Pegasus spyware. And according to the Hungarian authorities and procedures, this is not illegal. And of course it is. There is no, it's uncontrolled, and there is no independent body who would oversee the procedure of using spyware in Hungary.
Имајќи ги предвид сите овие предизвици, а во пресред на преземањето на председателството со Советот на ЕУ од страна на Унгарија во јуни, Европскиот парламент изрази сомнежи колку земјата ќе успее да ги исполни своите должности за тие 6 месеци. Но она што најмногу не засега нас, процесот на проширување, прилично е сигурно дека ќе биде еден од врвните приоритети во нејзиното председателство во втората половина од годината.
Of course, enlargement is always a hot issue here because we do care and we do a lot of proactive work with regards to keeping the enlargement of the Western Balkans high on the agenda. The main objective, or let's say the main message, was that we must keep it on the agenda in this watershed year when we are going to have so many elections in the EU and outside of the EU. Because there is this fear among the think tank community and representatives of the Western Balkans that the elections in the European Parliament, the establishment of the new European Commission, as well as the presidential elections in the US might overshadow this topic of enlargement towards the Western Balkans. Another key message for the region was that reforms must be done, but on the other hand, the EU and EU member states must also acknowledge the reforms and the hard work that the Western Balkan states managed to accomplish all over these 20 years or so after the Thessaloniki summit.
Ференц Немет од Институтот за надворешни работи во Будимпешта додава дека сосема е јасно дека ЕУ ќе мора да се реформира одвнатре пред да дозволи влез на нови членки во Унијата и да настане уште поголем хаос во носењето на одлуките.
Before Western Balkan states join the EU, there must be a new treaty, there must be some kind of comprehensive reform within the EU to be able to handle a community of 30 plus states.
Според Немет, кој што важи за добар познавач на Западен Балкан, лицитирање со датуми за влез во Унијата е само нагодување, па наместо тоа вели дека подобро за нас би било да имаме прецизен патогаз на реформи кој ќе не одведе до крајната цел – полноправно членство.
I have been conducting Western Balkans related research for the last decade or so, and there have been so many dates on the table. I do believe that having some kind of dates is a good thing because it can motivate the society and it can also motivate the political elites. Because if you have a certain date that the society knows and aware of, they might be able to take the governments accountable to undergo reforms, to be the engines of reforms, because they know that the clock is ticking and they need to perform. Instead of having, let's say, a date for accession, I would more appreciate, let's say, a roadmap, a comprehensive roadmap that establishes or that makes it clear what the candidate countries must do and when those reforms must be done in order for them to get to the next stage of accession. So instead of a date that would say that a certain candidate country would join the country at this time, I would much appreciate a roadmap clearly signaling what must be done from the side of the candidate country, what must be done from the side of EU institutions, and by the end there should be a clear date when this process should end.
Mr. Seattle, welcome to Agenda 35.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us here. It really is a pleasure.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Recently, you gave an interview and you said that you're next in line for presidency of the European Union, and you said that in that time the major enlargement will be made. So how do you plan to achieve that? And what are your prognoses, having in mind that the process is basically broken?
Well, I think the most important thing now here is to be honest, because I do believe that honesty is missing a lot from the enlargement procedure. And the perception which has been going on now says to those who would like to join the European Union at one point of a time as if the majority of the EU member states were in favor of the enlargement. But the sobering reality is that it is only the minority of the member states who are in favor of the enlargement of the European Union. That's the truth.
Is Hungary among them?
Hungary is among those who are the most supportive towards enlargement. It has more reasons. First reason is that we still do remember our accession process. So with some exaggeration, we can say that we are still among the newcomers, let's put it this way. So we have not forgotten about our accession procedure. We have not forgotten about the complexity, about the challenges, about the frustration caused by the fact that you hear that it's only 5 years to go, but then next year you hear the same, and in 2 years you hear the same, and it's always 5 years to go, then it becomes a bit suspicious, right? The second reason why we are absolutely in favor of enlargement is that we have to be aware that the European Union is in a bad shape now. And you have to raise the question how this shape of the European Union could be improved. And we do believe that the European Union needs new dynamism, new energy, freshness, new ambitions. And these can come only from the outside. And we do believe that the countries from the Western Balkans could bring this new impetus, this freshness, this new energy, new dynamism to the European Union, which are absolutely necessary from the perspective of boosting the European Union.
I will agree definitely that there is a gap maybe between the public narrative, how European Union is ready for new members, and what is going on in the reality. And there are some member states who claim that the EU should focus on the internal reforms first, and then to be ready for new members. Do you think this is an excuse?
No, this is very hypocritical. You know, the skeptical member states or the anti-enlargement member states never speak openly directly. So they will never say that, no, we do not agree with the enlargement of the European Union. No, we do not agree North Macedonia joining European Union. They will always put forward some artificial things, which you don't really even understand what they mean. So what does it mean, internal reforms before enlargement? What does it mean, deepening before widening? You know, so these are communication bubbles, communication, panels, which mean nothing. They just have the function to hide the anti-enlargement position. That's a problem. That's why I started with saying that honesty should come back to the European political debates. Honesty and mutual respect. So we think that the biggest problem currently in the European political arena is that there's a big lack of mutual respect. So, I mean, respecting North Macedonia, for example, for me, would include that the member states of the European Union should speak directly and openly about their position regarding the enlargement and regarding the accession of North Macedonia to the European Union. But you will never hear that. And what also frustrates me, that when I hear representatives of the member states speaking, publicly, and then I hear them speaking behind the closed doors. And
what do they speak behind?
If they were not the same countries, they put artificial obstacles on the way, and they put preconditions on the way which are absolutely not realistic. So, for example, 100% alignment with the common foreign and security policy of the European Union, I think is neither fair nor rational, because as long as a country is not fully integrated into a political integration, such a precondition must not be expected.
Even then, we see some member states who are not fully respecting on.
And then my other point is that sometimes the preconditions towards the ones who would like to become members of the EU are tougher compared to the preconditions for those who are inside. And just very recently, when Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine received a list of expectations, there were things which I did not really know whether they were serious or they were put there just to laugh about something. Just for example, elimination of the fragmentation of a political scene. I mean, in a democracy, a political scene is by definition fragmented, because if you have more parties, it means that the political scene is fragmented. So elimination of the fragmented manner of the political scene means one-party system. I mean, do we really want to push, the newly accessing member states to create one-party system? So, these are communication panels which sound nice. This is the language of Brussels, of the institution, of the bureaucrats, which is not understood by anyone.
Yes, considering this, how do you plan to use the 6 months that you will be holding the presidency to overcome these barriers? You talked a lot about the double standards, let's say. Maybe you will invite Mr. Radev for a coffee. Remember what happened with Mr. Orban when he was invited out for Ukraine.
Yeah, well,
you will be creative in a way.
Yeah. So what I think is the following: that a presidency must put realistic targets in front of the upcoming 6 months. So the presidency has a chance to put some issues on the agenda and accelerate them a bit. So put some files on the table and push them forward. That's what a presidency can do. So therefore, we will concentrate a lot of our efforts on the enlargement files to be pushed forward one by one. So I think it's a shame that the real accession talks have not been launched with North Macedonia, the same with Albania. Montenegro could not close one single chapter so far.
Serbia is also...
Sorry?
Serbia is also stuck in...
Serbia could not open the third cluster yet.
That's why I said the process is broken. And
absolutely. The process has been stopped, no question. The process has been stopped, although I think that one of the most important EU policies is the enlargement policy itself. So we will do our best in order to convene IGCs, intergovernmental commission meetings with all candidate countries. We will try to open new clusters of the chapters, and in case there were chapters or clusters open, we will try to close them. That's the ambition we have put forward.
Just the last question in this spectrum. For Ukraine and Moldova, there was created so-called fast track for accession process, and how I understand the political and geopolitical picture and the situation and why was this important, but on the other hand, how this undermines the Copenhagen criteria and the substance of the process, how important it is to go back to the basic.
Yeah, for us, the fast track is unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable, because the level playing fields should be ensured for the candidate countries. Just being in a war should not mean a merit, and this must be a merit-based procedure. And all countries must be, the performance of all countries must be judged on an individual basis, one by one. So no coupling, no artificial attachments. And that's why we will never support any kind of fast-track approach. Not to speak about the fact that it is not only Ukraine not being at all ready to become a member of the European Union, but it's the European Union which is absolutely not ready to receive Ukraine. I mean, you see, there were just some very minor decisions, like allowing the Ukrainian grain to transit through Central Europe. What was the outcome? The Ukrainian grain has spread over the market, ruining the business model of the farmers. Or there was a decision to allow the Ukrainian transportation companies to enter the territory of European Union without a licensing procedure. What was the outcome? They ruined the market. The Polish farmers have blocked their border. Now all the pressure is on the border of Ukraine and Hungary, where the waiting time is somewhere between 15 days for a truck. So for European Union is simply not prepared for Ukraine's accession. Not to speak about the fact.
It's a political narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to speak about the fact, how it looks from the perspective of North Macedonia, for example, which has been a candidate country for 18 years now, or more than that. That Ukraine comes and overtakes, on a fast track North
There was
Macedonia.
a interesting speech of Edi Rama, if you remember, when
Yeah, I
he said
do.
maybe we should start fight with each
Yeah,
other.
which
This
you
is-
should not,
this-
definitely.
Of course,
Which
this
you
is
should
the
not.
message. You have different positions with the EU, with the official EU positions and the NATO positions. You derail from the official line, and then the sanctions against you are announced. So this news, it's like a circle. It's even hard to follow on how many issues you have different policies. Criticism is here for how do you implement the rule of law, freedom of media, and many human rights and many other issues. And there was even a resolution of the European Parliament that Hungary is not a democracy anymore. You found that offensive for your people. The question is very, very clear. Why are you still part of organizations that you do not share values with?
Well, we do share the core values of the European Union. We want European Union to be strong. The question is how European Union should be made strong again, because currently European Union is weak and getting weaker and weaker. And we do believe that with the current policies...
This is the slogan, make Europe great again.
Yeah, well, and that's absolutely valid. And I could sign up to that, no question. No question.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. Because, I mean, if you look at the figures, you know, I mean, China has now overtaken the European Union when it comes to share of global GDP. We used to be number 2, now we are only number 3, and our share is declining. There's war on the continent instead of having peace. With the sanction regime, we have shot in our own leg, basically. European economy is suffering. Energy prices have skyrocketed. Inflation went up, you know, as never before. So the policies of Brussels should be changed in a way that instead of pushing for a federalistic structure of the European Union to be established, let's leave the competencies on the level of the member states, what are there now, and let's build a strong integration based on strong member states. That would be our position. Strong member states, strong integration, and not a super state. Not a super state.
Are there any other member states who are sharing your views? Because there is also a common view that sometimes what other states want to say, they're not brave enough to say. They're using you as the bad guys of you just to share the ugly truth.
Yeah, they are in the, as we say, they are in the wind shadow, you know. So
do you have any allies?
Yeah, absolutely. No. You know, there's a growing number of colleagues who usually come to me before the Foreign Affairs Council meeting saying that, hey, Peter, you're going to be tough. You're going to be resist, right? Tell them, you know.
So you're the face.
Yeah, and I tell them, look, I mean, okay, guys, I will definitely do because this is the national interest of the country. So obviously I will. But what about you? And you know, we can't because of the pressure, because of coalition government, because of NGOs, because of media, because of whatever. So, you know, the reason why it is only Hungary which can stand up so honestly and directly for its national interest is the very unique political stability in this country. If you look around in Europe, there's no other government which would be based on one party. All other governments are based on coalition.
There are criticism for being a liberal state.
Yeah.
That's why this is the situation.
Yeah, but you know, one thing must be respected, that this situation in Hungary has not been, you know, fallen down from sky or has not been won on the lottery. This has been the outcome of the parliamentary elections. So the people voted in a way on four continuous elections that Hungary should go that way. And Hungary should have such a government, such a stable political system, such a majority in the parliament. That's it. This is the decision of the people, and this must be respected because this is what democracy is about. And we understand that whenever it's not a liberal party to win an election, the liberals immediately question the democratic nature of that structure, which is unacceptable. So democracy is not democracy because it's the liberal to govern. Democracy is democracy because it is based on the will of the people, and the people have their chance time to time to express their opinion on parliament elections and make a decision which way the country should go.
But Mr. Szijjártó, it's not only the internal affairs of Hungary. Your relations with proven autocrats are evident. For example, from our perspective, you gave political asylum of Mr. Gruevski, who was our prime minister. I will not ask you why you did that, because you explained that many times officially, and you and I will never agree whether you should have done it or not. But now there is a new extradition request. What will you do about that? And do you have any contacts with Gruevski personally?
I used to talk to him frequently because I usually ask him about his opinion about the developments in the Western Balkans, how he sees things. He's the only former prime minister from the Western Balkans in Hungary, so I'm pretty sure that there's no one who would know better what's going on in the Western Balkans than him.
Like this, enjoying this.
Yeah.
Does he enjoy some special status?
No. What do you mean?
Like,
no.
I don't know, maybe some privileged status.
No. He got asylum, but you know, here this is not a political but a legal procedure. So when you ask me what's going to happen with the request for extradition, I have no idea because it's not the government, especially not the foreign ministry, to judge that. So it's always the court who has to make a decision. And you know, in our country, the government cannot and does not influence the jurisdiction. So we don't know what's going to happen.
I ask you this because the current leader, he is not in good terms with him anymore, and now because of these relations between them, do you think that his status here will be endangered in a way?
No, because it has nothing to do with legal status, whether he enjoys good relationship with whatever people in North Macedonia.
We mentioned Ukraine and this awful war that is in your neighborhood practically. You suffered also a lot.
A lot.
Can you tell us how many refugees did you receive? It was a big humanitarian issue for you as well.
Well, we have still been carrying out the largest humanitarian operation ever in the history of ours. So we have received more than 1.1 million refugees altogether.
But this affects also your minority in Ukraine.
The war does,
yes.
Especially in a way that many members of this Hungarian community have been conscripted to the Ukrainian army. Many of them have been deployed to the front lines, and many of them have died. So, you know, when the Dutch, when the Luxembourgish, when the Belgians speak about the war, that's a totally different angle, because there were no Dutch, Luxembourgish or Belgian people dying in this war, and hopefully this is going to remain the case. But many Hungarians have died.
Yes.
So when we call on for peace and we call on for ending the war, that has many reasons, but among them, one of the major reasons is that we don't want more Hungarian people to die, you know.
I can understand this position, of course, and your call for peace talks immediately. You also say that you stand for the territorial integrity of Ukraine, but at the same time, when you talk about peace talks and you talk that the Western countries should stop giving a weapon to Ukraine, do you see a contradiction here? Because knowing Putin and his position, do you really believe that the very first moment Ukraine stops defending itself, that he will really withdraw and will not abuse maybe this given gap? This is, for me, I have to say, this is a little bit political naivety maybe. Are you that naive?
Look, I think it's obvious that the strategy which was aiming at Russia to be beaten in this war has failed. Russia cannot be beaten in this war by Ukraine in this format for sure. But in the meantime, if the Western countries continue to deliver weapons, Russia cannot win big either, simply because of the amount of weapons which will line up or have been lining up against the Russians. So if neither side can win, really, then it is obvious that negotiations will end this war. Now, the only question is when.
Do you have any information? When?
No,
Is there something
unfortunately not. You know, I usually represent this position as well when I negotiate with Russian counterparts. And I always tell them that this war is bad for us. We condemn the war. We would like to see peace as soon as possible. And when I ask about the chance...
And also Ukraine in its borders.
Yeah, absolutely. Stand up for the sovereignty of Ukraine, that's not a question. But when I ask this, then the Russian officials usually keep on telling me that there's a law in place in Ukraine which forbids for the current leadership in Ukraine to negotiate with the current leadership in Russia. Well, I don't know whether it's a legitimate argumentation or not.
You have no relations with Ukrainian colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I have met him very recently personally. And I made it very clear to him as well that we want to see peace as soon as possible because we need a peaceful neighborhood. So I mean, living in a neighborhood of a war is really challenging. and this is really bad, and this is really harmful, you know.
It is, even in the continent. Thank you very much for your time and for this interview. It's going to be an interesting year. European elections are coming. We will follow this,
Presidency.
and maybe we will see you again and welcome you in our show.
Thank
again
you so
recently.
much. Thank you. I was very happy to be there.
Of course.
Thank you.
Следната недела се гледаме во истиот термин повторно и на истата фреквенција. Останете со нас и со програмите на македонската телевизија.